Yeah, I'd love to.
Good. Tell this
Council, let me call us to order.
Usually it's supposed to be your best face forward, and sometimes I fear that.
Council, because of the backlog, we didn't meet around the Thanksgiving time frame, and we didn't meet around the Christmas time frame, and our work sessions have been kind of short and sweet and non-existent. So we have 5 items here that are kind of backlogged, trying to take some of the pressure off of the 28th, which already that agenda looks like it's going to be big. So let me call us to order and let's begin. Let's start with the discussion on the pickleball courts. And Preston, you want to get us started with that?
I will. Tell me if you want to.
Yeah, sure. So we have a handout.
Oh, I'll start and then, but yeah, if you just be ready because you're going to be talking. Okay, as you guys read in the memo, Kelly asked to be on the agenda, so that they have already raised 69,000, I believe, maybe a little more than 71,000 since they even last talked to me. So they are coming to the council to see if you would be willing or want to increase the funds to $125,000.
No, actually, Chris is
More?
sorry.
Oh.
Interjection, just real quick. So we actually met with the guy who designed Barnes Park. I think you were in a meeting, so you couldn't come. So he measured out the layout, and with pickleball courts, you have to go north-south. So with the dimensions of Founders, we can only fit 6 courts, cost effectively. If you add 2 more courts, there's space there, but pouring extra concrete into the spaces and lighting just isn't smart. So if we go Rock Creek, then maybe it's a thought, but if we stay at Founders, we'd like to go for 6 courts, $90,000.
Okay, very good. Do you have other things you wanted to present?
So that, and then if you look, our goal is to, if you say it's okay, raise the $90,000 by the end of February. There's a letter from our biggest donor, which is the R.C. Willey commitment letter that you'll see in there. And then we would like to call the pickleball park something that R.C. Willey's decides, since they are giving us $50,000. They said that they would love to talk about that in their meeting at the end of the week and get back to us. Is that something that you guys think is okay?
Like going the extra mile.
Yeah, like having
Like
their
their
slogan, like Syracuse R.C. Willey's.
I mean, we've talked before about how we would like to honor them, and they've told us that they have restrictions.
Well, they told us that they would love that.
Personally,
at my home, said that he would love
Well,
that.
the people that we've talked to, I think, are at a little higher level, and they've said that Berkshire Hathaway has rules. So, I mean, as long as that's not a problem.
Yeah.
I would love to hear
don't
what
have
he
a
has to
problem.
Jordan, why don't you begin? When we begin this discussion, let's.
So I still think Krista has some stuff she wanted to.
Well, I just wanted to
Talk
add
about.
on there that if you guys see, I added our 5-year capital project plan.
Yes.
As you saw, we already had put in the $60,000 for the pickleball courts, that would come out of RAP tax. If you decide to go forward with, the money, then you're gonna need to obviously, this would find it and cut some projects somewhere else or take it out of different budget.
So one of the things I noticed on here is we have Founders Park East Pavilion. In my mind, this replaces that.
No, it should have been off, I'm not sure why it's.
No, I agree with Jordan. That was the first one that came to my mind, is this kind of goes in that place.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one, I don't know why we still have that on there. We actually meant to take that off.
Okay, and then my second one would be right along the same lines as Founders Park East Parking Lot Surface Seal, which if we're doing all this in conjunction with redoing all of that, I don't know if we need.
Maybe it's cheaper to do it at the same time?
Well, or
It's on the other side.
on the other side.
Oh, you
East
mean
parking
the
lot.
north side.
Yeah, it's on the north side.
The northeast.
I see.
Oh, okay.
So it'd be both. Should be all the way through,
Yeah,
but it's
with
not
half
just
the area.
So
the bigger
where
one.
is this
Yeah.
slated? Didn't we decide on maybe a couple of places and thought this would be good, but it may not work? There were a
Founders
couple that we
Park
came
was
up
the
with.
number 1, and
Okay.
then you guys said Rock
Oh,
Creek,
you've got a picture.
Stoker.
You have the
Great.
same picture.
Thank you. Yep, okay. I see you guys are on top of things.
So those were my initial thoughts. Is Cause if that money is still in our budget, I would recommend allocating it to this and just removing that East Pavilion, because I don't think we're gonna build that.
Yeah,
if
the
we
East
do this.
Pavilion, I'm not sure why it was
Okay.
still on there, cause there's other, and we'll talk about other options with Founder's Park at.
The retreat?
Yes,
Okay,
cause we have some ideas that we wanted to kinda throw by you guys
Okay,
to
good.
help improve Founder's Park,
okay,
so.
That's awesome.
I have no issue with this, and I would love to call it RC Willie something, but we gotta get a straight answer, cause they told us they don't do that, so.
Yeah, I might have I don't know if exactly what discussions you've had, but a clarification on that might be when, so my understanding is this may have been out of their sort of marketing and advertising budget.
Mike is
Which
over
then
marketing.
they have flexibility, whereas the other project that's been discussed may be out of another pot. So it might be depending on which funding pot it comes out of.
And I think critical to these ladies is probably whether or not you wanna go at $30,000 difference.
Yeah.
That's probably the object of this discussion.
Well, I'm okay if it's matching funds. I mean, if you raise the 90, I'm okay matching it.
yeah, me too.
Me too.
I mean, I would be the new person on the block to really just be a stick in the mud here, I guess, in regards to that. I mean, I had some conversations with staff and we kind of talked through the process, trying to wet my feet a little bit on this. Obviously, there's opportunity costs at every corner here, and I hope we always keep in mind the big picture of where we're trying to get to with our parks plans and the goal down the road. But they've done a tremendous effort, and I do kind of like, Jordan, your thoughts in regards to the other parking lot and that fact. I don't know enough about the budget yet to really decide where that comes from and make a meaningful contribution there, but great job on the efforts and, yeah.
I would just say as long as we can find the funds, I'd be happy to match anything.
So we're just
If-
trying to
if
come
we
up
can-
with 30,000, right?
Yeah, you've got the 60 in there.
Yeah, so, okay.
The problem you're gonna see is we've already budgeted everything in
Yeah.
this year.
Mhm.
So whether you're gonna move some funds around elsewhere,
For the next.
or if you're gonna put it in the 20
Well, and
budget.
it does seem like that east parking lot surface is 26 grand, which is about what we're looking for here. So
But to their
that's something
point-
that we can deal with.
Hold on.
Sorry, go ahead.
So to what she was saying, that's actually for the parking lot, it's not adjacent to this, the one that we'd probably be leaving alone. So we don't wanna,
Okay.
And that's,
We don't wanna sacrifice
that's long
that.
overdue.
Oh, further up.
Yeah, it's the
Oh,
one to the north, and it's long overdue.
Past the skate park.
That's it.
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
this side.
but yeah, so if some of this is going to that parking lot closer to it, then yeah, maybe, but it's not gonna be a full 26,000, it's gonna be some
But-
subset of that.
I think we could.
It's probably- yeah, it's
But
probably
the east
both.
pavilion, if that isn't happening, then
That's a
there's
big
enough
chunk.
money there to make up the difference. And so, I'm okay with that, and I'm okay if it comes from there.
But Chris is saying it's not really there, and you should.
Well, I'm just
You should
wondering.
ignore the fact that it says that
Well,
there.
it
Well,
says it's
we,
here,
well,
so
the thing is we
question.
just barely revamped this, and so,
Oh, there it is.
yeah, I just wanted to make sure, that's why I said to Steve when we
And they
revamped this,
estimated 80.
that it wasn't something else that was supposed to be there,
If
that
it's
was
not there, then
80,000.
we have a problem, because we have to find it. so-
Yeah.
It's on here.
No, it's on this paper,
And
but he's gonna go
Preston's
look.
saying it might not really
So
be
we
there.
sent over another one, and Steve and I and Chad was working through this, and I'm just wondering, cause I thought for sure that we had like,
So
X that out.
So we're not double counting. Okay.
Yeah, I just
I
don't
think
want.
we're favorable to finding the funds, but I am extremely interested to hear your ideas at the retreat as to how we can better organize Founder's Park, cause it's kind of our,
It's
at the
like
moment,
short
it's where everything happens in the city, and I think there are some inefficiencies that need to be resolved, and I'm excited to see your plan.
The one other thing that I wanna bring to the table really quick here, and I emailed Kelly about this, we wanna get on the bid schedule early if we plan to build this year. Otherwise, this is gonna end up, we've done so many projects where, I'll wait. 'Cause they're So we wanna get on the, sorry, but you're the people that need to hear this. We wanna get the bid out there soon and decide what it is we wanna get bids on, because we've done so many projects where we ended up waiting months and months because of the backlog of work from the people who ended up being our bidders, or our winning awarded project people. So if we're gonna do this, I think that we want to make sure that we reward all those people who put the effort in, all the people who put their 2 cents in, their $500 in, whatever it was, and we get this done. So we need to, if we're gonna go with 6 and we think that that's gonna make it by that time, let's get that bid out, at least in February. That's what we really need to do. Or we could end up September and it's still not done.
Jordan?
I agree with everything he says, except with the fact that I wanna make sure we do this in conjunction with the other modifications we're hoping to do. And if that makes us delay a little bit, I think it'll actually save money and we can actually do something better, because if we're gonna have to run power and things like that, it's better to do that in conjunction with all the other things we're doing around it. And so while I wanna get this in as quickly as possible, I don't wanna be wasteful with taxpayer dollars and have to do things twice.
I agree with you.
Thank
I'm
you.
not gonna contest with any of that, cause I
It'd be
wanna say.
crazy too.
Of course I would. Of course I would. But let me bring this to the table. It's not just our city. When I talk to members of other cities, Roy, West Point, these people have all had backlogs on whether it's support court of one nature or another, just because it's a limited batch of construction people who will do it.
Let me see if go ahead, did you have something, Fran?
I was just gonna say, Steve's back. He checked, yes?
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's in there.
But is that available funds to allocate elsewhere?
Yes.
Okay,
Ooh.
let me just be voiced and see if I get nods. What I'm hearing you say is that you would match up to another $30,000.
Yes.
Especially now that we just found out that's free money.
Wow.
Oh.
You know, let me put that on record as I was kidding.
Brody, you have a comment?
Yeah, so, if you look at the capital fund, projects list here,
Yeah.
under the wrap tax column, in this current year, the ending fund balance that we'd be looking at is around 89,000. So, correct me if I'm wrong, Steve, but I think if you were gonna find 30 and you wanted it to build it this year, that would be a good,
It's in there.
that would be a good place to take
Yeah.
it from.
And that's where we wanna take it.
Correct, and you have not opened the budget for that 60, that's just a placeholder, so
Okay.
officially that's not in the budget yet.
Okay,
Yeah.
Council, am I representing you correctly that you are okay with another 30?
We would
Yes.
match, yeah.
Okay,
Thank you for all your
Kelly?
efforts.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Bill,
And we do have, at the bottom, we have a fun fact, the governor might be coming when we break ground and have a ribbon cutting ceremony, cause he loves playing pickleball. We had a little win. That'd be fun.
I would like to see a one-on-one match against the mayor.
You better start practicing.
Come on over Tuesdays and Thursdays.
Oh, one more thing, could somebody check and see if April 4th is available? The Ogden Pickleball Association offered to do a tournament for us and then give us all of the money that they make towards these courts.
Wow.
Yes, I was gonna check for you. There's just, gotta move a couple things around.
Let's solve those offline, can we? Let's move on, let's go to item C. Discussion regarding selection of the name of the linear park on 2000 West. Presley, you want to please?
Well, you guys, we don't have a name for the linear park unless you wanna keep calling it linear park. Although I've been notified that there's a possibility we might have another linear park, so that would be silly. So what we're
Linear park 2.
Yeah, 1 and 2, or A and B, however you wanna do it.
Or perpendicular park.
Yeah.
Can we use Roman numerals?
So, we wanna do, eventually, it's been substantially completed. So we wanna eventually do either a ribbon cutting ceremony, something really, small to say. But if we're going to name it, then we obviously want some signage in it. And we wanna make sure that the placement, before we order those buffaloes that we're gonna put in, that it kind of goes with it, and make sure that, that's what you guys want before we spend that kind of money on the buffalo.
Bison Ridge, go.
Bison Ridge.
It's got a nice little berm along it.
It's not really a ridge, but okay.
So the discussion would be how we'll go about deciding, whether you guys wanna decide, whether you wanna put out some kind of,
I'd like the Parks Advisory Committee to have a shot at that.
I was actually thinking about the schools adjacent to it.
Having a
Is
naming contest?
having a naming contest at like the Syracuse Junior High, and I don't know if you want to do a Syracuse Elementary as well. I thought junior high you'd probably get a little better response, and so I kind of thought we
So-
let them hold a contest.
Then what do? Do you take the top few and put it to a vote,
And
or?
here's another question though, is that the high school has a marketing program, we could maybe let the high schoolers with their marketing program do something.
I kind of thought it would be fun to turn it over to the citizens in one way or another. I don't want a Bodie McBoatface incident. Although that was a cool, you never heard about this?
Did I miss
I'll
that?
tell you after.
Bodie McBoatface?
Yeah, when he's park face too.
Yeah, so we are going to ask that they be a somewhat legitimate request, because Parky McParkface, while awesome, probably not the best. So yeah, I would like to, I would, that's my recommendation, is
I think we
put it to
just-
either Syracuse, junior high or the high school, we can pick which one.
I think we just name this after Cresta.
Hey, Crest. It kinda goes along with.
Bison Cresta Memorial, I don't think that would go well.
Council, could I just chime in a little bit?
Yes, sir.
This year, this spring, we're going to begin a lot of educational process in regard to the regional park and the citizens are there. And we're going to want to get the advisory board up and going and get them tuned back up and moving again. We haven't had them involved in much of anything for the last couple, 2 or 3 months. In fact, one of the members actually resigned because his wife died, but of ALS. But I saw him today, and he wants to continue on. That's Mr. Newberry. I kind of favor Lisa's ideas as a warm up to that, maybe turning this over, because the final decision will be made here anyway. But but to have them come back with a suggestion, and then if that doesn't meet,
Or several suggestions.
or several suggestions on how to name it, maybe, or what to name. Not so how. Let them brainstorm. Do we do the schools? Do we do the? And let them have something to chew on, because we're going to give them substantial things to chew on coming forward.
Yeah, you could even, could I say something?
Yeah.
If you wanted to include the schools, you could have them sort of be the semi-finalist judging panel to give you a list of 7 or 8 names
I'm okay if
out
we
of the
let
hundreds.
them come up with like 3 finalists, present three suggestions to the council, and then we can vote on it, I guess.
Whatever process they want to do.
Because I'm not gonna let Parky McParkface go through if everybody else voted for it anyway.
I actually like Brody's idea. So let's kind of have the council take it to the school, the Parks Committee, take it to the schools, let them kind of go through, kind of sift us down to the final 3, and then make a recommendation on the 3, and then that way it kind of makes sure that we have the final decision, so we don't get Parky McParkface, which I still think is awesome. And it also keeps them involved because they are a great asset. So I think Brody's idea is a good one.
Sweet.
I would recommend maybe they come back with, because there might be several good names, and I think, it might be more fun and better for you to choose from maybe even 5 to 10.
Sure.
Okay.
If they get
Community buy-in.
75 entries and they narrow it down to 5 or 10, I think that's.
If they give us too many suggestions, there's only 5 of us to vote. What happens when we have 5 different votes?
Oh, I'm sure.
I'm sure you'll compromise.
Run off.
I'm just saying, there is a reason to narrow it down.
At that point, we move to
figure it
leg
out.
wrestling.
All right.
I'll win.
Okay, are you good with that? If we
Probably would.
Yeah.
Parks Advisory?
Okay. All right. Let's do
Parky
the,
McParkface.
You know what?
Brody, this is yours?
Yep.
Okay, I've asked Brody to present some proposals on using the survey this spring.
Yeah, just give some background of why we're doing this. If the 50-acre park, if we're gonna do all of it or even some of it in like a phased approach, if it's gonna especially if it's gonna need any kind of public funding, we're gonna need to get this out there and see if people wanna do it. So the idea with this survey situation is that it's a 1-minute survey, so it should be quick but meaningful. The biggest part of when you design a survey, you wanna, what is your purpose? What are you trying to get? So what I've proposed here are three goals for this survey. The first goal is just to raise awareness that we have a plan. I think the initial feedback we got at the pumpkin walk was really good. I think people responded well to it, and people got excited. This would build on that in just raising the awareness. The second thing would be to get some meaningful input to you on the features of the plan that they would use the most, maybe, and which ones are more important. That will become especially important if we have to phase the project. Maybe we can put as many of the top priority ones in first, depending on the logistics of it. And then finally, just any kind of like comments or suggestions if people wanna submit any. So I have these proposed questions. There are 4. The first one is more of like a pre-education where we say, before you take the survey, look at the park. So they know what we're talking about, right?
It's not actually a question, it's informative.
Exactly. And then we have these other questions. So assuming you've read through them, I just wanted to get a discussion and input on here and see if there's any kind of changes or things you like or don't like.
I like that it's concise and that it don't take a minute, because we get calls all the time for surveys and I'm like, no. So, and plus people want more of this type of thing, they're gonna want a voice in it. So, thank you.
I like it as well. I think maybe on the second and third questions, even offering another opportunity to put in a or other and a blank, a fill-in might be useful that way. If there are something that doesn't really fall under these general criteria, and you can
keep in mind that the design is done, so it's, somebody said, well, where is my volleyball court?
Sure.
But if enough people said they wanted a volleyball court, we could say, then let's shift some things around. I kind of feel like we need to say something, ask a question, and maybe similar to what Seth was saying, give them an opportunity to even say, is there something missing from the parks in Syracuse that you wish we had? Because maybe somebody spends a lot of time in the parks of our city and notices something that's really missing. So I wonder if we could adjust something on this to give them an opportunity to say, because if we have enough people that say we really wish this were there, then we'll know that's a general sentiment.
The last time we asked people what was really missing from our parks, the number one thing came back, trees. They would still say trees because they haven't grown yet, but we have planted them.
They're growing.
Dog park is also a popular one.
Dog park is a popular one,
And it
but we
didn't
don't
really
want
fit
to
with
put
our
it
Didn't fit in the regional park.
drainage.
So I'm gonna suggest that from a working standpoint, this survey could be improved, and here's why. If you were to say, what are the top 3 things that you want in this question 2, number 1, when you say adult softball, youth baseball, these are the same part of the park. This is not a different part of the park, so you're giving people a chance to vote twice for the same thing, which is not terrible, but it kind of skews the result of, is that really what's most important to you versus something else? No, it's a chance to vote twice.
So
Well, except for-
programmable is what you're saying.
Except
So-
for the adult and youth, the bases are farther apart. So depending on the league that you're playing on, and that can affect what fields you play on.
That doesn't affect what we build though. We're still building a baseball or softball use facility. We don't have separate youth ones and adult ones.
Well, usually they do.
But we don't. We have 5 fields and the bases will be moved according to the league.
Yeah, so it's the same facility. The benefit I don't know that people know that it can be an adult, facility, and.
So really what you're
and-
asking is, do we have an interest in one or the other
It's
after it's built?
It's kind of a bonus piece of information that, okay,
Yeah.
you know, people, cause if I vote for both, I think most people, if they're voting for both, what they mean is, yeah, my kids will use it, and so will I.
And so will I. But you're also kind of skewing what's the most important part, because you're saying, I can give 2 votes to the same piece of park. You know,
Well,
Let
except
me-
for that, like, my husband
Yeah.
would coach, but he would not play anymore because his knees are crap, so, just saying.
We could combine them, say
So-
youth and adult.
here's the thing that I think
Softball.
is, and maybe this is for a future survey, but a more useful way to approach this would, if we were to attempt to try and section off phases, even if those phases crossed over and said, with this part of the park, because when we build this, what happens if somebody says, I want the things at all 3 corners? That doesn't help us with phasing. That just tells us that you want the whole thing, or you want the parts that we can't combine in a phase. I get what you're asking, but I'm pointing out that the survey is flawed in the fact that you could have information that is less useful come back. So to solve that, maybe what you do is you take sections of the park and say, which of these phases would be more useful to
Programmable
you?
space
Or
for
prioritize
one,
them.
a
Well,
picnic
or
pavilion
prioritizing would be a very
area.
good way to use
Yeah,
that,
I
you
think
know? Take a
prioritize.
section that goes across the baseball and down, or take a section that goes just half of the park. Which of these phases is the most relevant to you and your family? That might be more helpful when it comes to phasing, because if somebody says, well, I really need soccer here, but I also need this spot that's the other opposite corner.
Also, is there an option in this park for fishing, or
No.
then we don't wanna include that, right?
No.
Because you've asked the question, why do you visit parks, but that won't help us
Well, that's what
for
you-
this one.
So I have a comment on this. So, based on these questions and what we're not asking, are we expecting a follow-up that would be, that I think then goes into exactly what you were saying? Because right now we're saying, what do you want? And then we're, based on what we're not asking, which is, well, how do you wanna fund this? And so the second question would be like, all right, so you said these are your popular things, here's the 3 phases. If we had a phase, which phase would you want first? Or if you want it all, here's the ways we can do this. And so I think your question actually belongs in the second questionnaire.
Okay. What I also want to do is, I also understand that surveys are both responsive and persuasive. And one of the things that I want to leave open there is, if we're going to use a tool like this, we want to kind of throw out the options that are realistic and ask people to choose between those, not choose between unrealistic options. For example, we have put a lot of energy into this park as is, and when we put it out to the public at the Pumpkin Walk, 99% of everybody loved it. One person that I could only count one that said that they thought it was all designed poorly, and he wanted a 5-acre parking lot in the middle of it, which is absolutely, I can make every argument in the world why that would be a terrible idea.
Oh.
But I'm not gonna start over because he thinks that we should have 5 acres of asphalt connected, you know, and so I guess my point is, let's not throw out the option of, please tell me to start over, because we already know that 99% of the people that have seen it loved it, so.
Yeah, and I think, that question number 4, I think you'll find that 90% of the people.
We'll leave it blank.
Will leave it blank.
Yeah.
But, you know, and those who do, it's a comment for a comment, it doesn't represent the whole city.
And some people will just say, build it now, build it last year, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there will be people that have
Right.
irrelevant comments. I get that, I'm just kind of throwing out, why are you so sensitive tonight? You're so brutal most of the time. Anyway, my point just being that if we want this, we should be asking questions that actually serve the public, because we want to give them an answer that they chose. Meaning, so when we throw out sections, if there was an overwhelming section, we could say, that's why we built that phase first. It's because we had relevant data. If we said, what's your favorite thing, and we get a real split between things that are not even connected, how do we say we served the survey?
Well, one thing I didn't wanna do with the survey is I didn't want I wanted the survey, this is just me talking. I think the council would want the survey to be data points, not a decision maker for you. I don't think we want the questions to be made in a certain way that
Which page do you want built first?
the survey
I'll answer
kind of
that.
paints you in a corner.
It puts us down to one.
Right.
So I want it to and I believe that you would want it to be something where it gives you data to make your decision, cause you have to consider all kinds of other details in what actually gets decided.
I think sorry, I'll let you finish.
No, so that's just my main point is I want it to be a data point, not a decision maker.
I think the top goal of this, while these questions are going to be interesting, the responses, I think the real goal of this first survey is to get the park plan in front of as many people as possible and get them to give a cursory look at it and kind of give us an idea of what parts of this park do you like, and then the real meat of this is going to come in the follow-up question.
And yeah, and you don't, what this survey would do is it would tell you if we completely, totally missed something
yeah.
huge.
Yeah,
Which I don't think we did, but
this
if
is
we did.
primarily educational for this questionnaire.
Okay, so let me throw out one other thing. When you ask in question 2, you say, you know, you list the things that you can choose as your favorite part of this, and you list playground, but we don't have a picture of the playground yet. So, I mean, I had people say, well, where's that playground? Because I had to mention, we haven't drawn it yet, because we're very open to options of what that will be. So you now have an item on there that somebody's gonna not understand.
Okay, just write playground.
And you know that, and
I know
and the
that,
council knows
but-
that.
Yeah. So one thing that I would just suggest in the follow-up one is that if we do prioritize, that we also do education along with it and put estimates of what approximately each phase will cost, so
Oh,
that
that's a good idea.
people understand,
The scope of it.
yes, that how expensive and what they're looking at,
Yeah,
and total.
I would envision the follow-up survey, which I would think would be in maybe
Probably June
later in the
timeframe.
spring.
Yeah.
Will be heavily geared towards gauging the public's interest in paying for this.
Okay. Thank you.
And for what part of it.
Yep.
Because the idea here is that you would have enough information to decide whether you would wanna put any kind of public funding portion of this on the 2020 ballot
Yes.
in November. For the citizens to decide.
And it's a good year for them because you have good voter turnout on the presidential, so it's good.
Can I make a comment? Just listen to me for a minute. I'm in the same vein as Jordan. I think this first survey is educational. For the majority of, I don't know how many people you interfaced with, the pumpkin walk. The night I was there was so cold and.
It was bitter.
I hear it was better than the 2 nights
Weeks before were
that.
amazing.
But in respect to the population of the city, it was still just a drop in the bucket. I think Jordan is right on the money. We want to use this first survey as educational. We want them to look. We want them to look at the thing, want to put the video that's available, a link to that so they can go see it, so that they know what has been designed. Because at this point in time, 99% of the community doesn't even know what's been designed. And probably half of that doesn't even know that they're even considering a regional parks. I think Brody's really wise in kind of the questioning not being too pointed, but to point them to something so they start getting ready.
What is the current take rate on the initial surveys and what are we seeing?
So right now the panel, we're doing a push to get people signed up because.
I've seen it, I just haven't.
Yeah, cause it's more than just this survey, it's about any kind of issue that you want public input on, through the survey, so.
What mediums are you using? Is it Facebook?
Yeah, we're doing social media, we've done the utility bills, the magazine.
I saw from there.
Yeah.
And then a flyer will be going out, probably later this week, to every home, as a final push to kinda get,
But
right
what's
now
the
it's at
sign
about,
up then?
right now it's about 420.
That's how many signed up?
Mhm.
Okay.
So, we wanna get at least 600, I'd like to get at least 600 for a good sample size. And if you think about it, you know, 600, if you had 600 people show up at a council meeting, how valuable would that input be to you? And this is essentially
Sure.
the same thing, and sometimes better, because it's actually thought, you know, through a specific input that you're looking for.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously certain people who like to take surveys, survey people, we
Yeah,
call
yeah,
them.
yeah,
So.
and that's true, it is, that's why I mean, it's a data point, you know, it's something you put in the mix with
Sure.
your decision making.
No, and I appreciate that, I think that's great.
But I think it's valuable.
Okay. I think it's good.
Um, I think we need to combine A and B on that question too, I think you're right, I think what I'd do is put baseball, softball fields, and then put youth and adult. Cause I didn't think about that you would get double counting. That's true. Is there, you know, should I add, so there was a comment early on about adding other. The only thing I can think of is like, you know, some of
Like these
their
swimming
favorite,
or something.
their favorite features are the trees.
You kinda have that, but you kinda have that in 4 though, number 4.
Yeah, I'd
as
leave
well.
that to question 4.
Yeah.
Just
It
kinda
Because-
any other.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it gives
because if
them
you
the
put it
opportunity.
in there as a feature that we don't intend to put in, then
Yeah, but put a
make them
pool.
cough it up on their own, not say.
It's an opportunity to
That's fair.
spend more money.
That's fair. I like that.
Do you have what you need?
I think so.
Dave, this is the last one you asked to be put on the agenda.
So we've had requests in the past if we could help find, scouts find a place to meet. And I think that it's a question we need to answer. And that's most important for me, is that we actually answer the question, because we've talked about it, we haven't decided.
Yeah.
So Cresta raised her hand too.
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah, come on up, because a lot of these facilities will be in Park and Rec. So, we do have several facilities that could be used, for scouting groups. There is a question, things we have to weigh as far as, do we allow them? Do we make them pay a fee, or do we waive the fee? And if we allow for one with a fee waiver,
Then we do that.
probably,
Where else does it
All of
apply?
them.
yeah,
Yeah.
how many other groups, are kind of similar?
How
that
many,
we'll do that
I
for?
how
totally
many Boy Scout
understand.
groups are petitioning at this time, do we know? Just
We've,
one?
no, we've just had, one that's come in, but we've had, like the Girl Scouts that's come in.
So 2.
We've had some people that's been coming in about homeschooling, just letting them use it to
Oh, wow.
homeschool.
Oh.
So there's a whole bunch of different groups that if you're
Have
opening it up.
kids groups.
That's what my concern is that we just need to be careful, cause we might be opening the Pandora box.
I agree.
Well, no, it's not just a matter of using space, it's all of the amenities, all of the utilities and the staff as well, and then the access to the rest of the building that damage could occur. I'm just, it could be a Pandora's box.
In the community center, obviously, we'd already have somebody staffed there,
Mhm.
and I don't think that we would let them, you know, use any of our
But
things, they would just use the
other
room.
stuff.
would you have to stay late though, because you're
We
talking
wouldn't let them
about-
do it.
No,
other
no,
than
we-
when close.
They would be
Yeah.
done when it
This would be a
closes.
non,
I mean, there's also the Jensen Visitor Center, you know, like Brody said, there's lots of
Right.
different places that they could go that doesn't even have staff there. The problem is you gotta weigh the options, like if you start giving it away for free, when are you gonna let people rent it?
Well,
Those kind of things, you've gotta weigh your options of your revenue and your expense.
just to throw out other possibilities, and I'm not suggesting that we end up landing here, but some scout troops are sponsored in part by a police group or a fire group, and they end up meeting at the station. I don't think that works for us, but I do wanna mention that that has been done across the country very often. So it's not, it's common for them to say we meet with, you know, one of those groups.
so here's kind of my thoughts on this. I read Brody's manager's report every month. Every month there is an Eagle Project donating time to the community. And I think that's really valuable to kind of keep. I think the scouting organization, I do think we need I think we should find a way to get them some space, because if we have a partnership with them, they do tons of free work for this community. I've not seen that from any other group that is requesting access. And while I don't want to make this a quid pro quo thing, if we start seeing where they're not helping in our city, I think I would probably reconsider the relationship. But right now, I think this is a great relationship we've had, and they've done a lot of amazing things for our city. And I think this is, for this specific group, I'm willing to put this through on a trial basis.
So why can't it be, if there is an opportunity to serve the community, that we give them, and I
That's kind of
think
my thoughts is,
yeah,
Yeah.
I do
if
think
they are
that
actively
if
serving in our
there is,
community.
if what they're offering is a gift to us, then we can provide a space to them, but, and it doesn't have to be a tit for tat, but it should be, if you're offering something to the community, then we take that into
But,
consideration.
How do you do it, one
I
troop's,
actually
one
think you
troop's
do
asking?
quantify it. Okay, so here's what
How
I
do you
think.
do it when multiple troops ask?
Right.
Yeah, what's the
It's a
volume
good
of
Girl
point.
Scout, if they're
Yeah.
willing to know that they could do that, I mean, like, where do you stop? That's what I mean.
Here's what I think. I think that we do this on the basis of actually quantifying the, a service requirement. Because scouting, Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts all have a service requirement for part of being a troop. They rank advancements and stuff like that. I think that you just say the troop can use the facility so long as they continue to provide X number of service hours a month.
To the city.
And
To the
that's the
city.
rental.
That's the
That's the
rental
rental
agreement.
fee.
So in lieu of, if you can't do that, then we would require a rental fee, and that
And it would
kind
spell
of
it out how
changes.
much
Yeah.
per month.
It does, except for the fact that I think you guys don't understand how much service projects we get, not just from scouts,
Mhm.
and not just from people that want community service hours. So people will come to us, and if you require that, they're gonna be like, give us these hours, give us these hours, give us these hours, you know what I mean? Like, what can we do, what can we do? Which does end up putting some hardship on the staff, cause we're always looking and trying to find stuff, even if it's not really needed, unless we're gonna say, you can go out and clean up garbage every week, that can suffice to it, do you know what I'm saying?
I
Cause
do.
it was, I mean, when you guys see the report that I give on our deep dive of how many hours that we've done, and it is because the Eagle Scouts was such a huge push right now, we know that was because the
Ending
church
the
was ending, and so
program.
there was
Right.
tons of people that were coming through.
Mhm.
And it has been beneficial, but it's the same thing with, are you gonna do it with, we talked about this with, like, lacrosse? Are you gonna give them hours off if they are willing to do service? And we said no on that, because it does become, so that's what I'm saying, I'm just being the devil's advocate in the sense that you guys, you're thinking,
Right.
guess
that's what
the-
we're gonna have to deal with.
Let me have Paul chime in here
Yes.
first.
So when you talk about fee waivers, one of the important steps that you take before you make a decision is to do a study. That's under section 10.8.2. They want you to consider whether there's a benefit that's coming to the community for the person seeking the fee waiver. And so part of the study would include analysis of benefits received by the city, cost to the city, and so we could probably answer some of these questions, and it gives you an opportunity to look at all these facts, and then you're supposed to hold a public hearing as well to allow interested people to chime in on whether that should be waived or not. So I would say don't make a decision tonight. If you want to move forward with that study, then let us know that, and then we can start moving that process forward.
Jordan?
Okay. One thing I don't know, and this, what is the current utilization of those classrooms? Cause if they're heavily utilized, then I'd say no, because those are a service we're able to provide.
Heavily utilized, because coming in I mean, we're now doing choir, all of the theater, the orchestra, some of the jazz band, and then we've got our own programs in there.
Okay.
So
There's not really a time, so if we said yes, we would be saying no to others.
Well, you'd be saying, could possibly say no to other rentals, because starting up, they just gave me their, thing in February, the choir starts, but starting in the end of March, April, the Arts Council is in there 3 to 4 days a week. And then we do tumbling in February, Tuesday and Wednesday. And then, you know, so that's what I mean, you can do it. You just have to weigh the options if it's something that you don't want others to rent, or that we're not gonna get that revenue.
Well, just with that,
So
you're down to one day.
It's mostly you would be a Monday or a Friday, those are the two big days that people will either rent, or, because Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Saturday is highly
So
utilized.
if they're heavily utilized, I actually say, well, maybe we can't do this. If we had rooms that were sitting open that they could utilize, but if it's gonna require us to turn people away to make room for these people, at that point, that changes my mind.
What
question,
do
have they
we
looked at
charge?
$30 an
Yeah.
hour per room,
Oh.
and it depends on what time of the day, because if they could meet at like 4 o'clock, 4 or
Because
5, then
they say
you're
we
okay,
don't
but
do
people
regular
start, if from
scheduled
5 o'clock
business.
on, it's pretty utilized, but if they
Well,
can do it
we-
like earlier in the day, then
That's
it's
what they
not.
told me.
The current need has been resolved. The current need is,
That's
the
right,
truth
they're
is now in the library, and the library offers for nonprofits a free use of that facility, so the
Well, they
current,
initially told him no, so I'm glad that
you
happened.
know, they are 2 weeks a month
Okay.
in with the library, so the current need has been resolved.
So are they looking for the other 2 weeks, or just to switch
I
those 2 weeks
think
to
that that's what
city?
their program is. I think it's every other week.
Every other week,
It's
okay.
every week, yeah.
Okay.
But that
And
is
it's
prohibitive if they're paying $30. I do know that the specific request was for the evening hours,
Mhm.
like 7 to 9.
It doesn't sound like we have the room, the facilities to facilitate that.
If you wanna do Monday or
Brody?
Friday,
Fridays,
possibly.
you could.
Okay.
Brody?
We
So
tell
something you
right?
could do as a matter of policy, so this would just be across the board, no matter who they are. And I don't think you would need a study for this, correct me if I'm wrong. In your fee schedule, if you had, if you had a regular fee,
Yeah.
and then maybe you had a 50% off for specific, say, nonprofits. Not named nonprofits, but a specific type of nonprofit, like a charitable nonprofit.
401(c)(3).
Something like, that's defined. So that any organization that qualifies gets the 50% off. And as a matter of policy, then it's in your fee schedule, it's easy to administer, we don't have to track it.
We don't have to do that.
And it's equitable across the board, not, what's available and what's not type stuff, as far as service opportunities.
But would you do this for just classrooms, or, I don't know if we could do this for our parks and things like that.
You could do it for, I think, whatever you want.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, cause we have like a lot of charitable 5Ks and stuff
Yeah.
that are always asking for, but we don't have that in our fee schedule, so. They're asking
What if
for
we were to
some-
even offer, like, okay, so these 3 days from 4 to 5 is open to nonprofit, organizations, meaning, or knowing that they were your least busy times, so if you had, whichever, that 1 hour per day that nobody tends to
We
be
have like a
there.
happy hour in the city.
Uh-huh.
that-
Happy hour.
But not for alcohol, it's for reduced, it's for cheap rentals.
And we're already given that, like the
Reduced
quilt
rental.
skill.
Okay.
Okay.
And we have senior programs that go on during the day, and we also do, the Arts Guild. They take it, once a month, so we are utilizing, but yeah, we could do that, or like Brody said, if you want to put it across the board, you give them the 50% off, and then they can come in and look at the days that are available, and then there's still some kind of payment or something that's
Yeah,
going
I'd
through.
really like
think
that,
that's a good
because
idea.
then it's an easy
Yeah.
decision, it's a much more smooth decision.
But I also like the
for everyone
recreational
involved.
happy hour, that's during certain times, you get a
Mondays
reduced
at
rate.
4 o'clock.
Yeah, if you're between,
Special.
3 and 5 or something like that,
It's gonna count.
there's a
Trivago,
reduced rate to
Saturday
get people
lunch,
in there.
Yeah.
If the homeschoolers wanna pay a reduced rate during that time.
They wanted from 8 until 5:30.
It's a little more
That's a
difficult.
lot.
Yeah, that's.
It's one of the days, but then they wanted.
So that's not homeschooling, that's city schooling. That's rec school.
Just on Fridays is what they're.
Okay, do you think you have
Probably,
enough
yeah.
direction where we can?
Yeah, do you
we
want
make this
more
part of-
direction? Do you
we
want
make
us?
this part of the deep dive, or?
I don't know, do we have direction?
Yeah.
So what it sounds like is we don't have an immediate need, so given that, I would maybe look into options down the road. But if the immediate need is solved.
Well, we do have, like what Brody was saying, we do have
I like
people
that.
that are coming in, like 5Ks and things like that are always asking for some kind of discount.
I think we
And
should
so,
do that.
obviously,
Put that on a
we
work
put that in
Then
the fee
how about if
schedule.
we combine the two, the happy hour and the reduced rate? And we say our least busy hours, those are available, so, 2 hours a
Same
day
price.
for a reduced rate
I
for
would-
those slowest hours.
I would throw this out there, if you don't have some slow time sometime, it's hard for staff to get a break. So I'm,
Well, as
I
long
don't
as
wanna
they're
put the
like in
pressure
and
on
out
you
within
that-
an hour,
That's not effective.
then it's good, but yeah.
Um,
As long as it's not something we're having to do.
Yeah, I really think we need to do that, the charitable organizations though, on the fee schedule, because we get this request a lot, and sometimes it's really obvious whether they are charitable or not, so.
Maybe what I can do is bring it on a work session and we can, kind of develop the.
what it would look
Okay.
like.
Yeah, what it would look
I
like.
think we should keep it open to, trying to fill in some of those times. Like I said, if it's really low impact and we can get more people using a facility, I think
It's
that's
like
a
a
good thing.
wedding on Friday the 13th, that's a
But-
cheaper rate.
Well, and you guys were just talking about the community center. You do have Jensen, it doesn't get rented out a lot like on a Monday or Tuesday. So if that's, something that you wanna look at for a scout group or for something else, then you guys can look at that too.
You okay if we bring this back to a work
Yeah.
session?
Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Krista.
Council, we're still in our business meeting. I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session.
So moved.
Have a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Oh,
opposed?
we have, do we have a public comment?
So we got two tonight.
Making sure.
Actually, 4.
Oh, what, two can
Well, we
use?
had.
No, how's your
No, not really.
It's like a parking lot.
Okay. And then, let's, you have my number, just give me a call or email, we can set up a time. Thank you.